Hello and welcome to CodeSlicing. In this episode, we're going to be combining two of my favorite things, which are of course, Avengers and SwiftUI. We're going to be recreating Captain America's shield. And there's quite a lot to it, so I've split it into two episodes. In this episode, we're going to be doing the shapes and the colors and the geometry. In the next episode, we're going to be doing the shading and the texturing, which brings it all together and looks fantastic. But like I said, we've got a lot to do, so let's get started right now. Right, so this shield is going to be built in layers. And we're going to use the fact that Z-Stack naturally does that to help us. Now, when it comes to Captain America's shields, colors are very important. So I'm going to define some colors at the top to make sure that we are being faithful. So let's create a little function. Create color, which will allow us to define our red, green, and blues nice and easily. We're just going to take a red, which is a double, green, also a double, and blue. And it's going to return our color. Right, and all that's going to do is return a color with these components, with the red one divided by 255, the green one divided by 255, and the blue one divided by 255. And now we've got our function, we can define our colors. Color shield silver is create color 211, 221, and 234. We've got three colors, so let's do the blue one next. And that is 22, 68, and 146. And then lastly, the red. 224, 22, and 26. Great, so we've got our colors, and we know we're going to have 4 circles of various sizes piled on top of each other. And because these circles are all going to have a color, we can improve clarity by defining a shape with a color specifically. So let's see. Let's create our view down here, which is going to be a sized circle with color. And that has a size of a CG float and a color of color. And we'll create an initializer for this, so we don't need argument labels. Let's see, float, color, and then we'll just assign those. And then our view is just going to be a circle, and we'll give it a fill color of the color, and then a frame with that size. And now we're in a really good position to start building this shield. So first things first, let's change this into a Z-Stack. And we're going to need a circle, or a sized circle with color. And well, we need a size now. Private let diameter, which is going to be a CG float of 400. Now, everything I'm doing in this tutorial is going to be based on a diameter of 400. So all of the line widths and the blurs and all of the other little specific numbers that I'm going to use are tied back to the diameter of 400. What we'll do right at the end is look at a way of normalizing that for any size. So we've got our diameter. And so we can layer these rings on top of each other, we also need to know how big are those rings. So private let ring size is diameter over 6. And you'll see where that comes into play in just a second. So let's put on our first circle. And that's the bottom one. That's the one right at the bottom, which is going to be red. And it's the full diameter. So diameter and color shield red. Let's resume to see if we're on the right track. Okay, not too bad. In fact, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll just do a preview size that fits down here. Preview that fits. There we are. And let's give it a bit of padding. Okay, that will do. So now we need a silver circle on top of that, reduced by the ring size. So we'll duplicate that. We'll say it's diameter minus the ring size. And it's going to be silver. And then we need another one, and reduced by 2 times the ring size. And we're going to make that one red. The last one is the central circle, which has a diameter of half the original diameter. So it's diameter over 2. And that one is blue. There are only 2 things we need to do in the rest of this episode. Create the star shape and create the detailing on that star shape. Now, if you've watched the series on layout guides, particularly the episode on polar layouts, then this is going to be a breeze to understand. I'm not going to go into too much detail here because if you are interested, all the information is there waiting for you. But layout guides in the polar incarnation is going to make this part of the tutorial extremely simple. Let's start with the star. And as I always like to do, define the shape first so I can use it. So let's have a shape, a private shape. We'll call it star. And that's all we're going to do for now. But we're going to put that star on top of these circles that we've just made, like this. We'll give it a fill color of color shield silver, like that. What size is it going to be? Well, we can stick that here. Star size, diameter over 2. It's half the diameter. All right. Meaning we can just write frame star size. So we're not going to see anything. Surprise, surprise, because our star is not actually anything. There's no path defined. We're going to do that now. So let's define our layout guide for this star so we can use layout guides as we're constructing it. Private let star layout config is a layout guide config of a polar type with 1 ring and 5 segments. Then we can overlay that with the star layout config. And then in our preview, we can say show layout guides is true. And if we resume that, we're not really going to see it very clearly because the layout color isn't that great. We can make it nice and clear by saying that the color is green and the line width is 2. Okay, nice and clear for us. Let's go down to the shape and start defining it. The first thing we do is create our layout guide, which is the star layout config laid out in the rectangle. First thing we do is we move to the top, path move 1 because it's right on the outer radius, and 0 because it's the first segment. And then we just loop around the segments. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to draw a line from the first segment to the 3rd, to the 5th, then to the 7th, and to the 9th. So we can kind of go crisscross across this and then just let the magic of filling do the rest of the work for us. Let me show you what I mean. So we're going to loop through the segments. We've done the top one, and we're going to go to the Y count of that particular layout, which is the number of segments. And all we're going to do is draw a line from where we are to the same radius, but the segment times 2. And would you look at that? It's just done it. We don't even need to close the subpath, but we will. And now we've got our star. And the reason that's working so nicely is because we're leveraging on the fact that the even odd fill by default is false. So it doesn't really matter if the shape goes over itself, it will just fill it. And that's all we need to do for the star. The star is now defined. So now we need to define a star detail. So the same as we did before, we'll call this star detailing. And then we'll define a layout guide for the star detailing. It's got to have twice the number of segments, because for this one, we're going to be coming in and out and in and out. If you want to be able to explicitly draw this shape and have an inner radius to go to, then there's a lot of maths involved. Let's put it that way. But if you want to have this kind of a shape, you need to know what the ratio is of the inner radius to the outer radius. Fortunately, I've already done that for us, and we need a radius of about 0.38. So what we're going to do is then define this layout guide as having specific rings at those intervals, like this. 0.38 for radius 1 and 1 for radius, well, for the outer radius. Okay, and we're going to have 10 segments instead of 5. Then we display it. Star detailing. We give it a fill color. Well, actually, in this case, we're just going to give it a stroke. Right, we'll give it a stroke of black with a line width of 0.5. While we do it, let's make it 2. We're going to make it 0.5 at the end. And then the frame that we're going to give it is going to be 0.9 of the size of the star. Let star detailing size equals star size times 0.9. Frame star detailing size. There it is. And then we bring this layout guide down like that. And this is the star detailing layout config. Let's resume that and see what that looks like. Right, a little busier, a little more interesting to look at. But if you notice, this radius is perfectly positioned. That will give us exactly what we want if we're talking about star detail. That will give us that same look. Let's start constructing this thing. Again, first thing we do is we create our star layout config. Right, that is star detailing layout config. And again, we move to the top, 1,0, right on the outer radius. Now the logic to create this is not that dissimilar from the logic we used to create the star in that polar layout guide episode I was talking about. There is a subtle difference because we have to bounce to the inside, to the center, in order to get the detailing that we really want. But let's actually magnify this so we can really see what we're doing. Right, for segment in, and we're going from 1 because we've done the top one, Y count. And the point that we're interested in going to is going to be dependent on whether or not the segment is odd or even. So let point equals G, segment is even. Are you even? Yes, then we want to be on the outer radius. Otherwise, we want to be on the inner radius. and then we go to the segment. Okay, and then all we do is we say that we draw a line to that point. If I resume that, I might actually see something. There we are. So we've actually got a star, no problem. But we do need to take a detour whenever we get to the inner radius. We've got to go to the center and back out again. And we only want to do it on the odd segments. This is very easy though. We just say if the segment is odd, then we want to add an additional line. We want to say path line from the center of the layout guide to the point. So we go from the center back out to the point that we just drew a line to. And there we are. That is the detailing. All we need to do now is to set some blurs up, set some line widths, get rid of the layout guides. So I can get rid of this layout guide now. And we can say that the line width is actually 0.5. And we're going to give it a blur of 0.75. Remember when I said there were going to be some magic numbers that were specific to a size of 400? Well, this is one of them. And we're going to normalize these right at the end. So don't worry about them right now, but these are the numbers that work with a 400 size shield. And then what we're going to do is double that up. We're going to add another star detailing with a white color. Well, nearly white. 0.95 with a line width of 0.75 and a blur of 0.3. And that's the detailing that I'm going for here. Obviously, you can go for whatever you like. But this is going to get us where we need to be in episode 2. Now, before we finish this episode, I'm just going to talk about the elephant in the room, because as you may have noticed, this is not representative of the actual shield. I used these values because they were easy to start with, and I didn't want to get bogged down in it at the beginning, but now obviously we want to get this right. Now, as with many things on the internet, everything maybe, there is some disagreement as to the actual geometry and the size of the rings and the size of the star and all of that. But I've found what I think are agreeable dimensions, which are relatively accepted in the community and also work quite nicely. So I'm going to assume a diameter of, say, 25 with a star size of 10. That's one that doesn't cause too much frustration, and it also makes the maths nice and easy. We'll leave the diameter at 400 because, well, it's all relative, but we are going to adjust the star size. The star size being 10 out of 25 inches, that is 2 over 5, which is 0.4. So let's replace diameter over 2 with diameter times 0.4. And now we're going to talk about the ring size, which is pretty badly named. So let's name that something a little more appropriate, which could be, let's see, diameter delta per ring. Okay, that's a little better. And unless my rudimentary mental arithmetic escapes me, we've got 0.6 left because the star size itself is 0.4. So we've got 0.6 left. We've got 3 rings. So each ring is 0.2. So the diameter delta per ring is going to be diameter times 0.2. So let's bring that back and resume. See what that looks like. Okay, so that's not quite right because we're not using the star size here. So let's replace that with star size. And there we are, much better. Okay, now we're in a much better position to continue and we'll ruffle far fewer feathers in the interim. So that's where we are. We've got our circles, we've got our star, we've got our detailing on the star, and we're ready to move on. Okay, so that's the shield pretty much done as far as the colors, shapes, and geometry are concerned. And I think you'll agree, it looks pretty rubbish. The good news is that that's all going to change in the next episode. So join me for that. It's going to be brilliant. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them below. But in the meantime, thanks for joining me. See you next time.